Alicia Neufeld. I- I'm a senior manager here at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and I just want to thank you all to everyone for joining us today for this conversation. So a bit of background about why we're all here together. In 2022, AMO launched the Municipal Workforce Development Project to address sector-wide challenges in attracting and retaining the talent needed to deliver on those municipal services that we all think about every day. AMO in our work is supported by an advisory group of senior municipal leaders and administrators, staff associations, unions, the Municipal Pension Administrator, and post-secondary representatives. The project is focused on collaborative action to strengthen Ontario's municipal workforce. Through this work and consultation, we've heard how important a strong, trust-based relationship is to creating positive and high-performing municipal workplaces. And the mayor-CAO relationship, unique and complex sometimes, plays a defining role in shaping that municipal culture, building public trust, and increasing the attractiveness of the municipality, the sector, and as employers. So we're very pleased to be hosting this session today with our partners at the Ontario Municipal Administrators Association. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Scott to offer a few opening remarks.
Thanks, Alicia, and thanks to AMO for hosting this important conversation. OMA is really pleased to be partnering with AMO on this Mayor-CAO webinar series to shine a light on the importance of strong, respectful local leadership. I'd just like to remind everybody participating today that if you'd like to revisit today's session or share it with your colleagues, that this and the other webinars in this series are available on our YouTube channel. Conversations about workplace culture, civility, and leadership expectations have really come to the forefront recently. While no two municipalities operate alike, every local government relies on one constant: people. The relationship between mayors and CAOs is particularly important in shaping how a municipality functions. And municipal leaders must have the tools and confidence to lead with integrity, respect, and collaboration. At OMA, we care deeply about this topic because it goes to the core of what makes local governments work. A healthy culture and respectful leadership aren't just nice to have, they're essential for good governance. Back to you, Alicia.
Thanks so much, Scott. So I'm honored to be your moderator today and to help usher us through this really important conversation. I'd encourage those all participating to engage throughout today's discussion. You'll see that there's a Q&A function located in Zoom at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to add questions into that Q&A at any time throughout the conversation. When we get to the end, we will have some time to answer as many questions as we're able to. Today, we're lucky to be joined by two exceptional municipal leadership teams. We have Mayor Brian Patterson and CAO Lanny Hurdle from the City of Kingston. We also have Mayor Hilda McDonald and CAO Peter Neufeld, there's no relation, from the municipality of Leamington. Thank you all very much for participating with us today. So our conversation today will explore lessons from their leadership experiences and how they've built workplace cultures rooted in trust, clarity, and shared purpose. So I'm going to start first with a conversation about evolving workplace expectations. So municipalities are inherently hierarchical organizations. You are here, you have a mayor and a CAO from two municipalities here to talk about the organizations that they lead. Yet, today's workforce, especially younger generations, place a much stronger value on workplace collaboration, flexibility, and purpose over hierarchy and tradition. So we want to dig into some useful strategies for fostering inclusive, adaptive workplaces that our participants here have found to appeal to these multi-generational staff, as well as leadership, while leading from the top of their structure. So Brian, I'd like to start with you and anything that you have to share from the Kingston perspective.
Thanks, Alicia. I mean, it's a great question, and I think certainly my CAO Lanny Hurdle will have lots to share on some of the mechanics and the programs about what we have in place to make the City of Kingston a great employer, an employer that is seen to be attractive, like it's a great place to work, and that you have opportunities, whether that's through our emerging leaders program, where young staff can find training to be able to work their way into a leadership position. One of the things that we do offer are secondments, where we give opportunity for staff to be able to move from one section of the organization to another, which is great. And certainly on a personal level, in my office, which is kind of the political wing, that we've had staff that have worked in my office that have gone into the corporate side, and then vice versa. Those that have worked on the corporate communications that are now working in my office. And they're very different environments. And I think that it's very enriching to be able to work on both sides of the coin. I think what I will say from the mayor point of view is that I see myself very much as the brand ambassador for the corporation of the city of Kingston out in the community. So the things that I'm talking about what the city is working on, if I'm talking about the projects and the initiatives that we have going on, if we come across as a progressive and exciting entity that's doing great work, I think it naturally makes it more of an attractive place that people say, "Hey, I would like to work for the city." I've long thought that, municipalities, I think, are the most entrepreneurial, the most flexible, and the most nimble form of government. And I think that there's a lot of people that might consider the public sector, but sometimes overlook the municipal sector. And so I think there's a role to play in how I communicate, whether it's in the media or if I'm talking to the Chamber of Commerce or just out in the community and really conveying that message. So I think that would be kind of more on the high level communication piece for me. But I will say that on a staff level, that Lanny and her team have done a lot of work to be able to really create and foster a really exciting environment that I think is a really attractive place to work. And so I think I'll leave those details for Lanny to share, but lots of good stuff happening here.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. So appreciating all the comments that you've made. Definitely one of our approach has been to have more leadership by teams. So the CAO is an important position for sure, but recognizing that we have an entire leadership group too that are young leaders, and we've really taken an approach of decision making by through this leadership team rather than just through the CAO's office. So that's definitely one thing I want to mention. The other thing that I want to highlight, and some of you might have actually heard about this, is our City 360 initiative. So this is an initiative actually that has been developed by a group of staff. So that involved staff from different departments across from frontline all the way to management. And it's really an initiative looking at 5 different pillars, trying to find strategies or solution to support those various pillars in terms of attraction, retention of staff. So those are branding and attraction for the city, recruitment and selection, retention and recognition, learning and development, as well as culture and well-being. So you talked about how, the younger generation wants to be involved, engaged, and that was a key way for us to do that, to be able to bring them to the table and have a voice in terms of what those initiatives and strategies would look like for the city. And it really ranged from looking at different practices in terms of our hiring committees and looking at training for ED&I and making sure that's embedded in our processes. Mayor Patterson talked about some of our, innovative approach in terms of retention of staff. We also have programs like the ones where we allow staff to volunteer in the community, and those are paid days where they get to actually volunteer in the community. We know that many of our staff are quite interested in giving back. Also, learning is a huge aspect for us. So we have not only a number of different learning modules, but we have the ability to set time aside for learning for each staff. We know that that's always challenging in an organization to find the time to do learning and appropriately. So we do have that as part of our programs and putting some emphasis on the learning. We have what we call a buddy system, and it's essentially the ability to match a frontline staff or a person that's looking to grow in their career path with a more senior and a leader in the organization. So it's really a range of different recommendations, initiatives that came from this group. It's been supported by our leadership team, and we are in the process of implementing. Some recommendations are going to be more challenging than others, but we are continuing to work through the implementation.
Thank you so much for sharing such interesting work with the Kingston example and your real focus on creating meaningful lifelong learning and meaningful work tied to the communities. I know we at AMO always say that we represent the government order closest to the people. And that's certainly true. And Mayor Patterson saying that municipalities like Kingston are focusing on work that has a real impact on their residents' lives is certainly has been no truer than now. So very, very interesting to hear. I'll turn to our counterparts at Leamington. Hilda.
Afternoon, Alicia. So from the political end at the municipality of Leamington, not that council has all that much to do with the folks that are on the ground here, if you will, but council put it in the strategic plan that one of our pillars is organizational excellence. So the message from council to the workforce was that, we want to make sure our people are paid a good wage, that they have training opportunities, they have advancement opportunities. And for that message coming from all of us sitting around that table, to me, is crucial. We appreciate the folks that work for us. We want to keep them here. We consider ourselves a very forward-thinking, forward-acting municipality. So we've also built that reputation going out. So from council's point of view, that's what we're here to do, to set that standard, if you will. And then we ask our CAO and our senior leadership team to carry that through. Now, I will say, I've been here since 2006. And in those days, culture in the workplace was not a priority. It was about rules, regulations, following the standard, right? Staying within the box. But I will say, since Peter has come on as our CAO, that has started to shift. When he came on, he had the perspective that building culture in the workplace was a key to, again, keeping those folks, giving them incentives, looking to have opportunities to advance. And I will say that was the beginning of, I think, a new standard in the municipality for anyone that comes and works here. And I will say, further to Mayor Patterson's comments, I also am invited oftentimes to the high school as well as to the grade schools, particularly grade 5 and grade 10. They have units on local government. And that's my opportunity to push those jobs in the municipal sector. And those young people, even grade 5, they're already starting to think of a career path. And in grade 10, then the pressure is on for that career path. So that's been my focus as to getting that message out. Local government is a great employer. Your opportunities for advancement are there, and it is just something you need to consider. So that's the political end of it, and Peter can fill you in on the structural, academic, what's the other word that I'm looking for? The administrative angle to keeping our people where they need to be and allowing them all kinds of opportunities, which I think is crucial.
It's the application of what council has charged us with. And that is, as Hilda had indicated, one of the pillars is organizational excellence. So how do you bring that to bear inside of an organization? And for me, culture is everything. And so the question asked, the way that the question was asked was to presume that the municipality is a hierarchical organization. But I can tell you that the model that I try to bring forward is what I call the servant leader model. And it isn't many organizations are set up in a pyramid. And what I talk about is the inverted pyramid, which means I'm not at the top of the organization, I'm at the bottom. And everything that I do is to be done in support of those people who work with me and report through to me. But I expect exactly that same model to be applied at their level so that they are always working in support of the people who report to them. So once you get to the top of the pyramid, which is flat, those are our frontline people who are working in the best interests of the residents. Now, that may sound, it works, except in crisis, when the pyramid turns back. because that is when leadership needs to come forward. There isn't often time for collaboration in a crisis, and so decisions have to be made in a timely fashion based on the best information you have at the time. Once the crisis passes, the pyramid reinverts. The other time is when we can't get consensus at the senior management table. Then again, it is time for somebody to make a decision. But here, I find that with the younger people, that is, they respond much better. Knowing that when I say I have an open door policy, it means that they can come here with ideas and not have to worry about reporting through their supervisor to their manager to their director, and the director to the CAO. Instead, they can come and we can have a conversation person to person. So it is the culture that I try to show how these young people can be engaged in the workplace. And it seems to be working.
Wonderful. Thanks to all of you. I think the theme that came across in all of your conversations was the need to really follow through on the principles that you speak of. So council puts place a principle of organizational excellence, and then it's really up to the administration to live that every day, and to show people that they can count on that and that that's there. Then in tough circumstances, sometimes, it can't function like that, and we need to make hard decisions on behalf of our residents, but that principle always remains true. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, intergenerational, multi-generational workplaces, one big change. Another big change that's moving right now is changing an information environment and the move towards social media and how that changes how we communicate with our residents. So social media, playing an increasingly growing role in amplifying misinformation. It's certainly not limited to the Ontario municipal sector, but seen all over the world in all orders of government. How do you as a leadership team maintain alignment and credibility with your communications, both internally within your organizations and also with the public? It's a tough one, but Peter, I'm going to turn to you for a start.
Well, it has been difficult. It has changed significantly, even over the last decade. But the way that Hilda and I maintain alignment is obviously through a lot of communication. That communication can be the fact that our offices are linked by a common doorway, so that we are able to talk quite often. You can see how we're set up here today. We do work together in this fashion quite often. So we know what our values are. We know the principles upon which decisions are being made are common between us. We may not always get to the same answer, but when things are principally based, we know, for example, that when the question comes up, we can ask, what is in the best interest of the municipality as a whole? That goes through to the social media and communications that gets out. I don't want to get too far into it, but again, this is one of those situations where back in 2015, our council of the day, during the strategic planning process, said they wanted to have better communication with residents. And it was at that time, a decade ago, that we set up a communications department. Now, that is something rather unique at the time within the municipality. But if you think back to what was happening in Leamington at the time, Hines had just announced they were closing. Leamington was in a state of turmoil, and communication with the residents was crucial. And so it was a great decision, a decision with a great deal of foresight that the council made at that time to increase communication. That decision has played out well now, because obviously there isn't just information, there's misinformation. And where there is a lack of information, misinformation will fill the void. So again, it was council that set that direction. So I'll see if Hilda wants to expand on that.
Thank you, Peter. And you know, Alicia, our communications team stays on top of what's being posted, how folks are replying to the messaging that we're sending out there. The advantage of that is we have a brand, if you will. Our communications team also contacts council, if not daily, many times a week, so that we all know what the common message is. So I believe that keeps us together as a team, but it also sends the same message rather than having individual counselors go out and give 7 individual messages. It makes us look consistent. It makes us look professional. And I believe it also kind of calms the fears of the public. If they see that this is the message coming from the municipality, that takes away the doubt, the fear, and because of our team monitors the social media every day, it is a constant message, and they're on top of all of those things that get said that may be an untruth or a misrepresentation of the truth. And that to me has been key. But also that branded message that we all are the same has been comforting to us within, so we know what to say, right? It's been discussed, but also, again, as I said, there's that level of comfort to the residents that what they're hearing is the same from all people around the administrative and the political team. And it's worked for us. It's worked very well. And today we did emergency management training, and we talked about the importance of that communications team. So again, we've gone through COVID, we went through a tornado, we've gone through flooding, we've had those events and seen how important that team is and how it's good to have that handling of the social media trends be an advantage to the municipality.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn to our colleagues in Kingston. Lenny, I'll turn to you first.
Thank you. I get to go before Mayor Patterson. So I mean, I don't want to obviously repeat some of the things that have been said. I think, again, we do, even though we're not in the same room today, I can assure you that Mayor Patterson and I communicate regularly, whether it's, by text or in person or whatever it is. We do that regularly to make sure we're updated. Our communications plans are usually quite integrated. So when there are issues that we anticipate will come up, which happens regularly, we do make sure that we have integrated communications plan. We identify a key person as a spokesperson for the issues across the municipality. So I would say between, the administration and definitely the mayor's office, we are quite coordinated on our communications. I will, though, maybe add another layer to this. Maybe we are not as fortunate in Kingston, but I wouldn't be able to say that our administrative messaging or corporate messaging is necessarily always the same messaging that will be issued by some members of council. Some members of council may choose to issue their own and different messaging if they have a different position. We as staff, of course, we will communicate all the information that we have to our members of council, but we understand that each councillor may have their own opinions about certain topics and may choose to communicate differently. From an administrative perspective, we do respect that. And our role is to make sure that we provide council with as much information as possible. I think I'm going to probably leave it at that and pass it over to Mayor Patterson. I'm sure he's going to have more to add to this.
No, thanks, Lanny. And I think, Hilda and Peter, you've said it well, that obviously, coordination, communication one-on-one, making sure everyone's on the same page and the same message is going out. Lanny does mention that there are times where things can go a little bit squirrely. Those are usually the most controversial, most challenging topic to deal with. So I'm just giving an example of something that happened in Kingston a couple of years ago. the city had agreed to purchase a former long-term care home with the intention of developing it, at least a part of it, into transitional housing, supportive housing. And I think anybody in the municipal sector knows that right now, that's probably one of the most volatile topics that you can wade into if you're looking at opening a shelter or opening up, other sorts of homelessness services, that can create some pretty strong reactions to the community. And in this particular case, there was actually, an intentional, not unintentional misinformation, which obviously happens, but also can be intentional misinformation to say that it's going to be a safe injection site and there's going to be drugs and there's going to be crime and it's going to destroy the neighborhood and all these pieces. And I think in those moments, that's where the mayor-CAO relationship is most critical. Because if you do have different versions or different information that's leaking out from different sides and the community is up in arms about it, that was a period where I distinctly remember Lanny and I were talking every day, making sure that we both had the same information. We were both talking from the same playbook. And quite honestly, we each had a role in how to combat that misinformation. I think from Lanny's point of view, her and her staff team, they were doing town halls, they were reaching out to the residents, they were trying to get the facts in play, which was, okay, what is transitional housing? What is it not? This is why we're doing what we're doing. This is how we're going to accommodate your questions and concerns. And then from my perspective, I took every media request I could get, everybody, because I wanted to make sure that not only was it the right message getting out to the surrounding neighborhood, but also to the community as a whole, because people talk, making sure that, again, that I was able to reassure, be able to talk about what we were doing, be able to give examples of transitional housing in other parts of the city and how it was fine and how we very much cared about the input and wanted to make sure that we were in no way going to do anything negative to the surrounding neighborhood. But that communication right there was critical because sometimes in these moments, there can be an imminent council decision that will come shortly after. And if you don't manage the communication information, then quickly public pressure can build and then you could get a council decision saying, okay, maybe we're just going to just back away and we're not going to do this, even if this is in the best interest of the community. So I think honestly, it was probably a period of a couple of weeks, her and I talking daily, and then basically each communicating to our audiences across the community as best we could and try to make sure that we could corral that message.
Thank you so much. Just to dig into that a little bit more, do you find that has been helpful, using the example of supportive housing or shelters? You take on a big project like the one that you took on in Kingston. It's not going to be the last project, right? There's going to be another one down the line in another community in another area of the municipality. And do you find sort of using that as an example, the response to that one that tackled media for the citywide rather than just focusing on that one specific community paved the way for it to be easier the second time, or may pave the way for it to be easier the second time, or at least removed some of the roadblocks you might have seen, or no difference?
No, I think that's a great question. I think you learn every time you do. So I think there have been cases where I think that our messaging has gone well, and then I think there were other times where you've said, you know what, maybe this is what we could improve in terms of how to be more proactive. And often it's that initial release of information. Now, the example that I'd given earlier, that information was leaked out, and unfortunately we had to do some damage control there. But ideally, being able to be very organized and very planned where that information, how it goes out, who's being spoken to, who is the messenger. And certainly in the case you've described, we have found that sometimes it's best if it's not the city. Sometimes if it's the frontline operator or organization that we're working at that's actually running it, and they're very good. They can be the face of it. They can go sometimes door to door or be able to speak to people one-on-one, and they're going to be the ones that are right there in that neighborhood. So I don't think it's possible to over communicate on tough issues like that. So when I said, like every day it was both Lanny and myself communicating, I think on tough issues like that, we make sure that we have lots of information and, that right message going out in every quarter, in every way, social media, traditional media, directly to neighborhoods, all those pieces. Because, I mean, I think, Peter, you said it well, right? In the void, misinformation fills the void. So trying to fill that void as much as you can with the right information.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I'm just going to remind participants that our Q&A is open. And so if you do have any questions you'd like to add in there, we will get to them nearer to the end of the webinar, but please feel free to add them in anytime. Moving on to our next topic, talking around maintaining morale in our organizations. And so, everyone's alluded to this already, but municipal governments are dealing with more complex challenges than ever before, very difficult budget situations. Being a municipal employee is a tough job. You're coming and you're doing a really important job, sometimes without, all of the tools and financial resources that you might like to have there. That's a big focus of AMO's advocacy and work that we've been doing over the last couple of years to try and write that. I'll turn to the Kingston duo first, but what signals do you think that municipal staff in your city take from the relationship that you two have and how you work together? And how do you consciously manage the signals that you give out to your staff and your teams?
Alicia, who would you like to jump in first?
You go first this time, Brian.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'll say a couple things, then I'll throw it over to Lanny. I mean, I think my instinct in answering that question is to say that, as mayor, I represent the political wing, and Lanny represents the corporate wing. And so when we're aligned, we're basically saying that the politics and the corporation, we're all moving in the same direction. And so I think you're always at risk if there's daylight, if there's a difference. Then I think that can make both sides vulnerable. And I always think that, both sides exist to try to make the other side look better. So I always try to make the corporation and the corporate side look as best as possible. I know Lanny and her team always try to make us as politicians sitting around the table look as good as we can as well. I think an example of where I think that can work well is with budgets. And of course, under the new Strong Mayor legislation, I'll give you a very up-to-date example. We've been working on the 2026 budget. So from a political side, I gave some pretty direct information about what I would like to see from staff in the budget. Although Lanny and I talked about it ahead of time so that I could get a gauge of what would be within the realm of possibility in terms of obviously, trying to address cost of living and keep our property tax increase as low as possible, but also understand what would be the potential things we might have to look like. So that's conversation that we actually would have even before I would issue any direction on the 2026 budget. But then from there, right, when it's issued, because she and I have talked, obviously it did involve some difficult decisions and some measures that we had to look at. And so I think from Lanny's side, she might be, getting questions or concerns raised from a staff level and be like, well, is that really what Brian wants to do? And, and she can say, no, he and I have talked, we're aligned. This is what we have to do. And we have to make that happen. And then by the same approach, if then staff put together a budget that aligns with my direction and it's got some tough measures in it, I'm not then going to turn around and throw staff under the bus and say, this is terrible. We're not going to do that. Because again, we've aligned. We've said, okay, this is the direction we're going to go. We agree. And these are the things that we're going to have to put in the budget. And so I think that staff, get that message that Lanny and I are aligned. And then also council and the community also get that message, because then I support that work and we work collaboratively. And I say my line to the community is that I've worked with staff, with our corporate management team on putting together this budget. This is what I think is right for a community at this time, just giving all the external pressures that we're seeing. So I think that a good example of how that signal goes both to the corporate side and also to the political wing and the community as a whole.
So thank you. I'm going to add to that, but I'm going to start by making maybe a couple of comments. So I'm going to say Brian. I know I've been referring to Mayor Patterson, but usually I call him Brian. So Brian and I have been working together for probably about 10 years now. And we're lucky enough to have, I think, built that relationship over a period of time to the point where sometimes I feel like we can read each other's mind, and I am not kidding. I've mentioned that to him recently. Um, and I think people around us, and for me, primarily staff, are aware of this close relationship and connection in terms of priorities and our approach to things that we've built, obviously, over a number of years. So, in terms of the budget, the example that Brian mentioned, yes, it was definitely a difficult year, and we had directions, political directions from Brian, but we were also able to involve him in the decision-making process. And we actually went through what I would call a vetting process in terms of what we were proposing to include direction and the goals that had been established. So that's obviously a little bit unusual for us, but within the context of the strong mayor powers, I think it's very important to do that. And it's definitely, something that we wouldn't have necessarily done 5 years ago. But that has enabled not only, that relationship between Brian and I to build, but also with the rest of the leadership team that are sitting at the table and trying to work through this budget, because that's how we've tackled the pressures and the challenges. We work closely with directors, and I would say Brian has a very open relationship and working relationship with those commissioners and directors within the corporation. So that helps to build, I think, that sense of trust across the organization. So that's, I think, what I would like to add to this particular example.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. That was a great overview of how the two of you and your, the relationship that you built over many years has helped you get through, a tough kind of organizational challenge. Budgets have been a challenge for municipalities right across the province this year, I know, and have been for a few years. To our Leamington team, I'll turn to you to talk a little bit more about a cultural issue. So have there been any sort of issues within the culture of your municipality, whether that be morale or turnover, or, organizational conflict, that your strong relationship has helped you get through in Leamington? And maybe I'll turn to Hilda first for that one.
Sure, sounds good. Well, I get PTSD every time I talk about COVID. To us in our region, we were unusual because of our yearly influx of migrant workers. So just when COVID hit, that was when our 10,000 workers started to come in. And you may or may not recall, Leamington and Kingsville were kept shut down for longer than the rest of the province. And it was a time of huge internal conflict, community conflict as well. We have a large group of conservative order Mennonite folks who do not believe in vaccinations, who do not like when the government brings in rules and regulations. So we were bombarded on all sides. And at the same time, the health unit really shut down the greenhouse industry to the point that one greenhouse particularly claimed to have lost $19 million. So we were at that point in time, talk about talking every day, Brian. We talked, sometimes it seemed like every hour, because that it was constantly changing. Every hour something new. And I remember both of us commenting, we're building the plane as we're flying it. And it was a time, oh my gosh, we worked, what did you say?
60 straight.
60 straight days. And that was Saturday, Sunday, trying to find solutions to problems that had never, ever come up before. I remember calling Peter one day and saying, I'm working on something I'm not really sure I should be working on. And he said, but who else is going to do it? We got called asking for the rec center to be used, the ice surface to be used as a morgue. We were called to find housing for people that were working in the health services industry. We were called by the funeral home saying we needed to be moved up the list for PPE. It was so, I can't even describe it. It was crushing. But we talked constantly and supported each other because we were on the front lines. I feel like we got through it because we knew we had multitudes behind us. We had our administrative team behind us. my council members, we kept them constantly informed. It was just a matter, again, and you said the same values, the same level. There's a level of trust. Again, he always says to me, I'm not going to let you step in that pothole. And I always say, and I'm not going to blindside you. So it was a time when all those things were tested. And then that led into a very controversial election based on the decisions that we made during COVID and those months preceding that. But I feel like we've come out stronger until I start talking about it and then I twitch again. But seriously, I couldn't have asked for a better person to be standing shoulder to shoulder with me. Again, trusted each other. And even if he got the question first, he'd look at it from, well, how would Hilda approach and take this into consideration and vice versa. So yeah, I'm very confident in the fact that he has my back, and even for him to make a decision and then tell me after, I know it will be a good decision, a fair decision, and it's been a ride, I guess is the best way to put it in. And I'm proud to say we stood strong and stood together, and here we are, still standing.
Still standing, yes. Hilda alluded to the impact of the following election, the election following the COVID pandemic. And something unique happened during that election campaign. And it was not just the politicians who were being disparaged, but it was also administration. Administration for taking the positions that they took, that we had to take, the decisions I had to make as it related to our corporation and vaccinations, making decisions based on the best information that we had at the time. And you asked about the morale. And, during COVID, that was difficult. People were working from home for a long time. And so something that I started doing was sending out an email saying, I'm walking the virtual halls of Town Hall, and I'm coming into your office in about 15 minutes. And I would set up a Zoom meeting for whoever wanted to join could come in on the Zoom meeting, and we would get together and talk. During special times during COVID, whether I believe Mother's Day and Easter and Thanksgiving, I took the opportunity to create one-way presentations, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, talking about the circumstances we find ourselves in, how to best combat some of the difficulties, some of the feelings of isolation and loneliness. It wasn't based on how we're going to get our work done. It was based on caring about the people that you work with. And coming out of COVID, there seemed to be an extension of that the organization seemed to be a tighter, more caring organization, having come out of that experience. So dealing with the morale issues was more about showing concern about the individuals, showing concern about their mental health and about their well-being, more than just, are you getting your work done? And of course, that extended over to the mayor and council. We find ourselves concerned about how are we going to lead the organization in the best interests of the municipality based on the principles and the strategic plan that the council has given us. If that doesn't set up a partnership and doesn't set up an environment in which the organization, that being the municipality, is going to progress, I don't know what does. So the morale issue hasn't been really an issue for us, but I think that's because we have been attentive to it.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much. So we have a little bit of time now to take some audience question and answers. So I'll just open this up to any of the four of you that like to jump in. One of the questions that came up that struck me is you've all spoken about sort of how close of a relationship you've built through conflict. You know, Lanny saying that you could almost feel like you can read each other's minds, and I saw Hilda and Peter you nodding when she said that. And so one of the questions that we got was whether a very strong mayor-CO relationship can sometimes raise concern from other members of council, and how you can be sure to build a strong partnership while not isolating other council members. And so I'll open it up if anyone has any thoughts on that.
I can jump in on that one. That has come up. That definitely is something that I've had to manage in the past, where sometimes people might feel that that I've had a hand in directing staff to recommend a certain direction on a certain issue. Where really, I'm always very clear with council that, I very much respect that boundary, and quite honestly, yes, Laney and I chat, but sometimes there are times where sometimes we might even disagree. There are times where staff might bring forward a proposal that maybe I politically don't agree with. I'm very respectful about it, but I understand that they work for council as a whole. And so I think that one of the things that I think that the antidote to, that sort of concern around council is to make sure you've got a good relationship with your councillors as well. So if you've only got good communication with the CAO and you've got terrible communication with your council, then I think you're going to have problems. If you have really good communication with your council and terrible communication with your CAO and staff, I also think you're going to have problems. So I think it really comes down to having good communication around the board. And this is something I'm going to say that I think Lanny is very good at, is that there's oftentimes where if information has to go out, she sends it out to all of us at the same time. So even if she and I have spoken beforehand, when it goes out to myself and all of council. So councillors never feel that they're in the dark on a particular issue where staff are working on something, so that everyone feels that it's a level playing field. Obviously, I'm the head of council, but and Hilda, I know you're the same way. We're team players. We manage a team, right? We're not, I'm not a dictator here in the mayor's office. And so I feel that that's often the best way, is just ensure good communication all around. And again, I think that's partly on me, and I think Lanny and her staff team do a good job of that as well.
I'll jump in there too, Alicia, if you don't mind. That's it 100% for me as well. I have two counselors that come and see me every week, that they just want to be kept up with whatever's going on. And when there are issues that come forward, because oftentimes my council members will either call, text, or email with the question, and I will give them my point of view. And I always encourage them to talk to the CAO as well, because I feel like that's what they need to do to get the other side of the story, right? And I always like to say we're the political, we're the people on the ground next to the residents, where administration, they're the theoretical oftentimes, right? Their decision is based on data, theory, process, and procedure. So I always encourage the 2 points of view. And if there is what I see a potential controversial report coming, oftentimes I'll call council and I'll say, I just want you to know my take on this. If you've got something to tell me, I'm always open. I feel I have a reputation for, if there's enough data, I can change my mind. So I encourage that conversation between myself and council, but I also encourage it to go on to the CAO. And again, when my counselors come in and visit me in my office, many times I'll call Peter in and say, oh, Paul's got a question, or so-and-so's got a question. And then he'll come in, and again, it's the communication. That's the key part, so that they can see that it goes a multitude of ways, not just this way, but also amongst all of us. And I think that's actually the key. And if anyone is first starting out as a mayor, I think they need to consider that's extremely important. And I believe it's a key to success.
Manny.
Thank you. From a CAO perspective, I agree communication is key. the relationship building early on, I think, is also really important. So when you have brand new counselors that are starting, to take the time with proper onboarding and meetings with those counselors to understand what their concerns are, not just in the beginning, but also on an ongoing basis. So I have meetings regularly with members of council to talk about issues that they're most concerned with in their particular districts. I talk to counselors on a regular basis, probably on a daily basis, different counselors. I do have 12, so there's only so many hours in a day, but I do obviously prioritize communication when I'm aware that there are issues in their district that need to be addressed, or if I have information that would be useful to them. I think that's really important, and I try to foster that throughout the term of council, of course.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I think we have time for one more question. I think this one will be primarily for Lanny and Peter. However, Brian and Hilda, you may have your own thoughts. But obviously, we're all looking ahead to this fall and the next municipal election. We have a question about how does a mayor's re-election campaign affect the public working relationship between a mayor and a CAO? And should this be considered when the CEO might be seen as aligned with a current mayor? Lanny, I don't know. I want to
Over
turn
to
to
you,
you
Lanny. You
first.
take that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a difficult question. It's a very interesting one, trust me, but still challenging. Um, I mean, there's no question that as a CAO, and in my case, having worked with Brian for about 10 years, we've built that relationship. So the ability, of course, to continue to work together longer, from my perspective, would be reassuring. And I would say, not just from my perspective, but from the organization's perspective too, because Brian has been in this position for a while now, and people have this level of comfort. There's a sense of, what to expect, and you get to know your mayor much better, and how you can work with your mayor. Obviously, having a new mayor means you have to learn new things all over again. You have to build relationships, and there's always a bit of fear, I think, around that. Not solely speaking for myself, but I would say for the organization. Having said that, we will work with whoever's our mayor, and if it means building those new relationship and learning, we will do that. But definitely, I think there's that level of comfort with our current mayor, and if our current mayor was to come back, Brian was to come back, I think it would alleviate a lot of the concerns that might be present in the organization otherwise, especially in the context of strong mayor powers. I think that has made a significant difference in terms of how staff react to their current or their future mayors.
Thank you. Peter, anything you want to add?
Well, yeah, I see the role of the mayor as the representative of the people. So my job is to work in the best interest of the people. Now, I think it's crucial to have somebody in the mayor's chair that has and shares the same values as the CAO and the administration. But ultimately, the working in the best interest of the community as a whole ought not change that much, regardless of who is sitting in the chair. Now, that being said, I can tell you that when our senior management team reviews the reports as we prepare to bring reports forward to council, one of the things we talk about is one of the titles is political acuity. And what that means is that we not only look at it through the lens of how council might view this, whatever the issue is, but also how it may impact them in the view of the public. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we change our recommendations, because the recommendations are, as Hilda indicated, normally based on data and research. But it does we specifically try to put ourselves in the shoes of the politicians and not ever put them in a position where they can't move forward with progress. And I think that comes across to council, whether it's a new council or a council, an experienced council, when council realizes that administration is not trying to place them in a difficult position. I think that you build the trust, and regardless of who is sitting in the chair, that the trust will go forward. Hopefully, we see that coming from the political side as well, because it's a mutual trust that really allows municipalities to be successful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Hilda or Brian, anything you'd like to add on that question? No, I think that's probably
we
fair.
did have, with the last election, we did have well, it was my opponent who threatened to clean house when he would get in. But again, that was post-COVID. That was angry reaction to rules and regulations. But it did cause us all a moment to pause, did it not, Peter? To say, wow, if you had somebody come in that was looking to wreak havoc, it could actually be done. And it is something that is concerning, and particularly in these days of populism, that you could have 4 years of havoc if you have that type of person come in. And then what will they do? They have no experience. If they get rid of a CAO who comes with all kinds of history and knowledge, that is just a downward, oh my gosh, downward spiral for a community. So all we can do is hope and pray that this does not happen, that people who put their names forward do it for the right reasons and come in with the willingness to learn the ropes, to learn the processes and procedures in order to proceed politically, because the other would set us all back, I'm going to say, a decade.
And sorry, the only thing I would add there, sorry, Brian, the only thing I would add there is that it's not just the impact on the CAO. It undermines the security of all those working within the administration. And when you do that, you cause fear, and fear will keep people from looking for unique ways to solve problems. And it creates a fear factor. It undermines everything that a municipality is looking for. Sorry, Brian.
No, I think that that's a great point, Peter and Hilda. I think the only other piece that I would add is that at the end of the day, as a politician, right, you want to look good. And so when you've got a good corporate team that executes well, that gets stuff done, that responds to the need of residents, then it makes it very difficult for a political candidate to run against that because there's a respect level in the community. And so I think that corporate side sets up to some degree the right candidates to then who can win an election. To be honest, it then becomes, okay, how do I capitalize and actually work with the staff team so that I can be successful as a politician? So I think the corporate side, the great work that Lanny does here in Kingston, Peter, what you do in Leamington, you set up that, you seed the ground. That you get good people putting their name forward. And I think it reduces the chances of what Hilda's mentioned, which I agree, keeps us all awake at night, is that you could get somebody wanting to just burn the house down. But if it's a good house that's built well, that's doing good work, I think that the chances of that are much less.
Wonderful. What a perfect way to end today's session. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us today and shared questions. It's been certainly a very thoughtful and engaging session, and I hope everyone has taken away some new insights. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our partners at OMA for helping us put together this expert panel, as well as our 4 panelists for coming and giving their time and sharing their expertise with us. A big thank you from us at AMO and from OMA, and hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.